Hey guys, Serac here, and yes, I am still alive, I'm still kicking. Yu-Gi-Oh's been incredibly expensive. I've ended up in hospital, I've had changed jobs, and yeah, just making videos has not been at the forefront in real life recently. But anyway, I'm back and it's time for free content season, and we are today going to look at my predictions for the ban list that is hopefully upcoming, unless the December wasn't actually a typo and we are still going to have to wait another 2 months. But anyway, let's get into it. So, for our forbidden cards, we're going to start with Mystic Mine. This is obviously an incredibly unfun card to play against. People have to run outs for it just to have a chance at playing it. Mystic Mine decks have won many of the last major events, people playing it main or side, and just it's currently really just defining the meta at the moment. If you cannot answer Mystic Mine, or you don't see the answer to Mystic Mine, you just lose to this card. And it doesn't encourage skillful gameplay, it just devolves the game into, can you draw your copy of Cosmic Cyclone? Next we have Fairy Tale Snow. Now, again, cards going from banned to 1 and then straight back to banned is not great, but Snow is an incredibly strong card. She allows your cards on field to dodge targeting things such as Imperm or Effect Veiler. She gives you interruptions for free. She's very, very gummy and difficult to remove. She allows you to trigger things like Topologic Zeraboros. The current best deck in the format is a deck that discards and mills constantly, so it can put itself into the graveyard very easily. If not, you just make Curious and dump it that way. It just, again, is a very, very gummy, unfun card to play against. It's very fun to play with, but it's very frustrating to play against. And I think it's a hit that could really, really help to damp down tier a little bit without hitting the actual tier cards, because let's be real, they don't want to hit tier yet because they still have lots more power of the elements to sell. Third is Called by the Grave. I hate this card. This card should either be at 3 or 0, and I think it should be at 0. If it's at 3, you can at least plan for it and play around it. If it's at 1, you can't. It's not just a hand trap stopper, even though hand traps aren't played as much in this current format. It can also imperm something that's already on the field if there's a copy in the graveyard. It's a DD Crow. It lasts for a whole turn cycle, and it's just one of the probably most broken cards in the game at the moment. Next we have Anti-Spell Fragrance. Now, this is here because we're in a board breaker meta. Now, with board breaker metas, most of the best board breakers are spell cards. We have Lightning Storm, we have Droplets, we have Dark Ruler No More, and so on. Bar Droplets, none of those can be changed to an Anti-Spell Fragrance. If your opponent sets up an Anti-Spell Fragrance, you may not be able to break their board if all you have is Dark Ruler or a Lightning Storm. And that's really, really difficult for you to play against, because again, it's not a card that gets main decked, it's a card that gets side decked, and it just devolves what should be potentially a beneficial matchup now for you because you've sided in your answers, then your opponent flips the Anti-Spell Fragrance, and well, the game is over. So I think Anti-Spell Fragrance should go again because I think it just leads to unfun play patterns. And the other thing is, when you're in a format where people are starting to consider maining cards like Anti-Spell Fragrance, that's a big pointer that the meta is not in a healthy place with regards to that card. Artifact Scythe. Now, we've been seeing a bit less Scythe recently, but of course the Dagda Scythe combo still exists with Wonder Magician and so on, and I think Scythe is a card that is going to be a problem in multiple formats in the future, and I think we should just ban it now and get it over with, rather than leaving it to linger. I think it's already overstayed its welcome. It's obviously an incredibly strong card, putting an extra deck clock on your opponent. It can be summoned through Dagda and Wonder Magician. Obviously the original way of doing it was through DPE, but decks are even playing Artifact Sanctum in the side, sometimes with even Trap Trick as well to sidelock the opponent. And I think that that is a real telling way of putting that this card is too good in the current game. And even if it's not seeing lots and lots of play at the moment, I don't think anyone would be sad to see it go, because there's lots more interesting things you can do than setting up a Scythe lock to win a game. Limited. First one, Super Poly. I was torn on putting this in the banned versus the limited list. I've gone for limited, but I could be swayed either way. The reason I think Super Poly needs a hit is, again, obviously Tear. It's a very, very strong board breaker, and with the card Garura, Wings of Resonant Life, it's just become even stronger. But the other thing for Tear is that if you have a bad hand, you can unlock it with cards like Super Poly, or if you're playing regular Poly. And I think that's the biggest thing that makes it so good at the moment, is there are decks that don't mind that can use it for board breaking and board making. Obviously, it helps you break your opponent's board with cards like Garura, which is so generic. It can help you make your board if you draw a clunky hand that you need some way of being able to fuse, but you haven't got a way of getting stuff into the bin properly. Or it can be used to push an OTK through super polying in the battle phase. All of these things are currently relevant, and I think, especially because it has no counterplay, I think it should be hit at least to 1, if not banned. Emergency Teleport is another one of those cards that they've just brought back to 3 and should probably be at 1. Again, Punk has seen a little bit less play because of the power of Tear and Spright, but is still sometimes seeing play with both of those archetypes. E-Telly is obviously very, very strong in that just accessing any level 3 or lower psychic can easily turn a game on, set off any combo that you want. Obviously, the main one people use it for is the Punk combo, but it also sees play in decks like Spright, playing Gamma, and so on. The main problem with it is that with it being at 3, you can just play 1 copy of Zeamin, and it makes the engine very, very compact and not normal summon reliant. Whereas if you play it, if it's at 1, you then have to say, well, we need to play more copies of Zeamin, but that uses up our normal summon, so if the Zeamin gets stopped, then our turn just ends. Whereas with Emergency Teleport, you always have scope to extend further. Danger Nessie is another one of those cards that's now unlimited and should probably go back. Again, Tear. It's probably the most egregious danger because it's the one that gives you card selection. Obviously, Jack and Open Snack are both still at 1. Bigfoot doesn't do anything going first except put a body on the board. And Mothman also draws your opponent a card. And Chupacabra only does something if you have dangers in the bin already. So Nessie would be my hit to that. It's also an Aqua, which makes it really, really good for tier fusions because they can use it to make Kit Kalos. So that's why I would hit Danger Nessie. For cards that can come off the ban list to go to 1, I've put Orcus Harp Horror. I love Orcus. I want Orcus to be playable. I don't think Harp Horror would make it broken by any stretch of the imagination, and I just want to see what Harp Horror can do at the moment. I am a little bit scared of people trying to mesh it with Tears and just getting huge numbers of mills, but Tears has a lot of moving parts at the moment, and I do wonder if Orcus might just be piling on too much at once, very, very win more at this stage, because what do you get out of Orcus? You either get Ascend if it's your opponent's turn, or you get to set up an Omni Negate with it, which, yes, is strong, but I don't think Tear needs it that much, considering it already has access to things like the Griffin's set Eradicator plays, it can Zeraboros you, or it can just grind you out with constant advantage. And then finally, for cards that can go to 1, the scan has not shown the name up well at all. It's Tellarknight Ptolemaeus. This was banned because it could make Cyber Dragon Infinity. I think if you can't deal with a Cyber Dragon Infinity now, in 2022, you probably need to look at what deck you're playing. It takes 3 monsters to make a Cyber Dragon Infinity because it has to detach 3 materials, and that's just even more points. There aren't that many rank 4 decks at the moment. Exorcister is 1, but Exorcister has quite a heavy Xenolock if you want to put more than 1 body on the field. So I think this card is very much safe to come off the list at this stage. For semi-limited, we've got 1 card, it's Performer Pal Monkey Board. I am of the belief that every single Pendulum card, bar Electromite, can come off the list, and we would not see very much difference. I'm a little bit hesitant on Plushfire, but I think doing it gradually is definitely the way to go, so I think Monkey Board can quite happily come to 2 and not change too much. It may be a bit different with the new Dracoslayer support coming in Darkwing Blast, but we can give the Pendulum players a bit of a bone again. They've been shafted for so long. And finally, no longer on the list. Now, this is a lot of cards. The first 3 are the cards that went to 1 from banned. They don't need to be semi-limited. No one's playing Yatagarasu or Time Seal at 1, no one would play them at 3. Jet Synchron does the same thing at 1 as it does at 3, so that can easily go back to 3, and then the others are just all the semi-limited cards. Nadir Servant probably shouldn't have been semi-limited in the first place. By the time it was hit, there were much stronger things you could do. It's a very nice extra piece for the Dogmatica engine. Garura makes it a lot more valuable, but you have to actually see the card. It's just a very good all-round card with a nice downside of locking you out of the extra deck. Again, Trickstar Light Stage, this card is fine as long as Engage and Hornet Drones remain at 1 apiece, especially because we're not doing Nightmare combos anymore, so even then it's probably even less worrying. But no one is playing Trickstars now. Light Stage sees some play as a supplemental engine, but it's not doing anything broken by itself. Dynamite Knight, again, True Draco does not do anything with Diagram at 1 and Masterpiece banned. It can come off the list. I'm, again, very much of the theory that the semi-limited list is not a great idea and should mainly be used as a quarantine or in very specific cases like Malicious, where it actively does reduce a card's power level, because most of the time it just reduces the consistency. But Dynamite can very much come off. True Draco is not doing anything at the moment and will not do anything with 3 Dynamite compared to 2. Cyber Angel Ben 10 was probably the one I was most hesitant on taking off, maybe alongside Pot of Desires, but I think, again, Drytron is okay at the moment, it's fine, but it really lacks the power that it had from Eva, and that's the biggest point to taking Ben 10 off. I don't think Drytron does anything different with 3 Ben 10 compared to 2. They may not even choose to play all 3 because they do have really easy access to it anyway. Tenki can go to 3, no questions. Tri-Brigade aren't doing very much at the moment. They still crop up from time to time. It's a consistency boost to them, but other than that, it doesn't do much else. Again, especially with the zoos all banned, or limited in the case of Rapier, but we have no Dryden, we have no Barrage. There's very little that Tenki is searching other than Fractal at the moment. Fusion Destiny can go to 3, no questions. Verte was the problem. Again, at the moment, I don't think DP is even that good because Tier just fuses and then you're back at square one. And there are people playing cards like DD Crow and so on to hit Tier, which also helps stopping the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer constantly coming back. Pot of Desires can go to 3. The only decks that are playing it are Tier and Sword Soul. I'm a little bit hesitant at the moment. We have hit Tier a little bit. They may go from a pot deck to not a pot deck. Sword Soul has been power crept a lot by the additions of Spright and Tier, and is just not as good as it was, so I think Pot can quite happily go to 3. If we're allowed to play 3 Extravagance or 3 Prosperity, I feel we should be allowed to play 3 Desires. Finally, Wall of Revealing Light. No one was playing this card. It can go to 3. Yes, arbitrary number of life points can be a bit funny at times, but if Dynamorphia want to try do some janky stuff with this, it'll be very, very funny. So that's it. Those are my predictions. I think the entire semi-limited list can basically be wiped, aside from Malicious and anything new they put on it. I think mainly the things to hit at the moment are floodgates and just a few targeted hits to bring Tier down a notch with cards like Super Bolly, Nessie and Snow. And then a couple of unhits just to spice things up a little bit. Again, I love Orcust. I was always going to put Harp Horror on this list. Please don't at me at that regard. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. There will be some deck profiles up at some point in the future. I can make that promise. I cannot promise exactly when, but there will be at some point. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.